Good morning. When most people think of genetically modified organisms, crops come to mind, like the hyper-resistant wheat and drought-tolerant corn. But what about genetically modified animals? Genetically modified animals will be coming to the food chain and herd of the world in the near future. But what will they accomplish? To further this, we will discuss the effects of selective breeding, the modifications in question, and whether it is ethical to do so. Now, the first thing to understand when talking about genetic modification is that this process of moving one set of genes from one organism to another is not a new process. People have selectively bred animals for different traits for thousands of years, but there are drawbacks from this ancient technique of selective breeding. Selective breeding involves taking one different breed of the same variety of animal and coupling it with an entirely different animal to gain a better result than the offspring. But this process takes several generations of animals to accomplish this task, which takes too long for the effects that the cattle industry needs in this day and age, as well with the issues of crossing not going as planned and gene not passing to the offspring, which countless years are wasted on this cross. This is where genetic modification comes in. New scientists can isolate one specific gene and implement it directly into the host genome of an undeveloped fetus by use of the piggyback protein, giving results in an instant, which earlier would have taken generations to accomplish with selective breeding, allowing more time to utilize this gene cross and open the world to crosses between different species that would not occur naturally and benefit the world all the same. Now, knowing the gist of how scientists accomplish this feat, what are some of the modifications that scientists are trying to develop? The first of these are the ability to give female cattle higher muscle mass and to gain more muscle gain and help alleviate some of the bile load from limiting the amount of calves needed in cattle pastures and feedlots. By using more heifer calves that are not used for replacement broodstock, which would allow a faster turnaround for the feedlots to produce more beef for the growing country, and to keep beef prices lower for the consumers, helping everybody hand in hand. Another leading problem facing the changing world is the mass amounts of methane produced by cattle on a daily basis. Science Daily states, the average ruminant, meaning animal with four stomachs, which cows are a part of, produces 250 to 500 liters of methane a day, which drastically affects the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere melting polar ice caps. But there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Scientists have discovered that the genetic makeup of cattle is what determines the levels and type of microbes in the rumen, the first stomach of the cow. Professor Williams states, previously we knew it was possible to reduce methane emissions by changing the diet, but changing the genetics is much more significant. In this way, we can select cows that permanently produce less methane, allowing the 37% of methane produced by human activities to be diminished significantly without the use of special feed intake, as previously thought, allowing one more step to a zero-emission cattle industry and a cleaner earth. Now, one of the most needed is helping cattle survive in harsh climates, mainly in South and Central Africa. Most of Africa cannot support cattle long-term because of the tsetse fly, which, after biting cattle, causes the infected to lay down and die. Every year, millions of cattle die of trichinosis. The UN and International Livestock Research Institute lists trichinosis among the 10 diseases of cattle with the greatest impact on the poor. But if it is found quick enough, trichinosis can be treated with trichoanicidal drugs. But with prolonged exposure to these drugs, the parasites build up an immunity, making these drugs useless over time, which makes it harder for these people to keep these cattle alive and well, which they need for precious protein and the health of themselves. And if the infected tissue of a cow with this disease is infected, there is a chance of spreading the parasites and pathogen towards human since trichinosis is zoonotic, meaning a pathogen can transfer between animals and people. But there is hope. A species of native cattle is resistant to this tsetse fly and its protozoa that is infected with it. Found by the University of Vienna, the Baoli, a West African cattle breed belonging to the people of the same name, seems less affected by trichinosis than others. When they are affected, Baoli cattle develop fever and lose weight, but do not necessarily die, which allows them to survive. But these native cattle are a dwarf breed, meaning we only get, on average, 500 pounds, which does not provide enough for the people who need them to feed an entire village. But by taking the resistance gene from the small but immunologically stronger cattle and placing it in a larger breed already known for parasite resistance, meat quality, and milk production like the Beefmaster, would give the stepping stones for helping the people in harsher climates grow the protein needed to help them in the harsh climates, and making it safe to eat from this horrible disease, which cannot be done through old ways of selective breeding, since mostly dwarf cows cannot breed with larger breed cows, therefore they cannot make them bigger. But most activists argues that the practice of taking a gene from one animal and placing it in an unborn embryo is unethical, simply because it goes against animal rights, since it involves making animals better for humans, almost like animals are nothing more than just property for humans to manipulate to their needs instead of treating them as value in themselves. But these claims are not true. First of all, the modifications in question towards beef cattle would be accomplished all the same with the use of old selective breeding techniques, such as the higher muscle gain and the methane production. They could do that in theory, but things like the tsetse fly would never happen in real life, unless you use genetic modification. But with more animals affected over several years, the use of selective breeding for these methods would make more animals have to be used over the long run. Genetic modification today focus mostly on speeding up the already successful processes of gene exchange between different breeds of the same species. But the claims of the modification becoming unethical is a long shot to what is currently being developed, which aims to help rid of damaging diseases from cattle and not limiting their ethical values. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Services, or ARS, claims that an abnormal form of prion, or natural forming proteins, is believed to cause devastating illnesses called transmittal spongiform encephalitis, also known as mad cow disease. This disease affecting the brain of the animal is horrible to endure and requires euthanization of the animal and burning of the corpse, as well as destruction of the calf if applicable, since it will soon develop symptoms from contact. Now the ethics comes into question by altering the DNA of cattle and eradicate the formation of these deadly prions not needed for function. But since this alteration can save so much unneeded suffering in these animals, the advantage and promotion of this amazing technology outweighs fallacious ethics and allows extension of animal rights. This technological advancement is not just to better cattle for human advantage, but to also eliminate factors that cause great pain and suffering to these animals. Thus, the studies underway for the understanding of mad cow disease is just a start. With enough research, most of the notorious incurable diseases, such like anthrax, will be eradicated from the cattle bovines, allowing for an ethical approach to genetically modified cattle, and allowing for more people to adopt the system. In final regards, can genetically modified cattle change the world? From making selective breeding almost impertinent to the superiority of this new technology of gaining genes inside a species, as well as understanding this technology's importance to the third world countries, where protein is limited due to disease and climate, as well as limiting the factors of climate change from the cattle industries for methane production, to understanding the claims of ethics violations in this process and proving this technology not only betters humanity, but also saves countless generations of cattle from suffering from diseases that were once thought incurable. This technology is an amazing piece of science engineering. We need to utilize this technology while we have the chance, for the sake of the planet and for the sake of the animals and humans that call it home, before it is too late to change. Because once it's gone, it can never be replaced. Thank you.